As we close this season, we return to where it all began, with Sarah and with a dream. But now we see that the real work of building a business was always about something deeper, building a life.
Exactly. And, for quite a few deep dives now,
Yeah.
we've really been digging into the structure, the mechanics of Michael E. Gerber's The E-Myth Revisited.
Right, the practical stuff, the
Yeah.
franchise prototype, systems, all those roles.
Uh-huh. But the sources we're looking at today, these are excerpts from the very end of the book. We've got the letter to Sarah and the epilogue. And honestly, it's a huge shift in focus, almost like breathtaking.
It really is, isn't it? You spend all this time with like diagrams and org charts,
Yeah.
and then suddenly, bam, he pulls back to this much, much bigger picture, this really personal landscape.
Mm.
So our mission, I guess, for this deep dive is to unpack how he makes that connection.
Right.
How does building a small business, something so tangible, so operational, connect to this, well, more abstract, deeply personal, really profound work of building a meaningful life?
It's about the why, isn't it? Not just the how.
Exactly. Understanding the unexpected philosophical side of the entrepreneurial journey. And like he frames it, rediscovering your spirit through it all.
It's a really powerful pivot he makes. It moves the whole conversation from, the tactical
Yeah.
to the existential.
And he kicks off that whole existential exploration in the letter to Sarah with this incredible Rollo May quote.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Freedom does not come automatically. It is achieved. And it is not gained in a single bound. It must be achieved each day. Just that one sentence. Wow. It carries so much weight.
It really does. And Gerber immediately, draws a line from that idea that hard-won daily freedom straight to the path of the entrepreneur.
Okay.
He talks about reading May's book, Man's Search for Himself, which came out way back in 1953, and he points out something kind of striking, almost ironic he finds.
What's the irony there?
Well, all these concepts we talk about now, they're brand new. These hot subjects, core values meaning purpose, empowerment.
Yeah.
May was already discussing them with incredible eloquence,
Yeah.
like 7 decades ago.
Huh. That's quite an observation. It makes you wonder if we've really, moved the needle much in understanding ourselves despite all the change around us.
Precisely. And he doesn't just stop with May. He brings in this whole constellation of other, heavy hitters from literature, philosophy.
Who else?
Oh, Camus, Dostoevsky, Kierkegaard, Kafka, Orwell. He mentions T.S. Eliot's The Hollow Men, David Riesman's The Lonely Crowd. These aren't, business consultants.
No, these are people wrestling with the biggest questions, the deep stuff.
Exactly. And he makes a point about the scale of their questions.
Yeah.
For them, it wasn't about, optimizing a sales funnel or improving Q3 results. It was life and death.
Wow. Yeah, that's a stark contrast, isn't it? He's really highlighting a difference in, gravity.
Totally. And it leads him to this really critical question that just sort of hangs there. After all these decades of just massive global change, the Cold War, landing on the moon, all the revolutions.
Civil rights, sexual revolution, digital, yeah, all of it.
After all that upheaval, why are we still searching for meaning? Why are we still treating it like it's some kind of new, baffling problem?
It's like everything around us changed, but that fundamental human need, that search for purpose, it's still there, unresolved.
And he gives this, pretty provocative answer. He suggests maybe we just don't care enough.
Whoa, really? Don't care?
Well, not that we don't care about anything. He clarifies that. He knows we care about, making money or safety, protection, even the Super Bowl outcome. We have plenty of immediate concerns.
Okay, so we do care, but maybe about the wrong things, or maybe not deeply enough. Is that the idea?
That's exactly it. He argues the things we have come to care so much about are ultimately insignificant. Insignificant when you measure them against the scale used by those great thinkers or by major religious texts throughout history. And he hits us with this really blunt critique. We're just not very serious people these days.
Oof, not very serious people. That definitely gives you pause. What does he really mean by that?
He connects it to how we approach things that actually require some depth. He suggests we even treat profound concepts like values almost like a commodity.
A commodity, like something you can just buy.
Yeah, maybe something you pick up at a weekend seminar.
I get it. You can just acquire leadership skills or empowerment by attending a training session instead of, really cultivating it through deep work and actual experience.
Precisely. He's critiquing that sort of perceived superficiality in a lot of modern training. Leadership, empowerment, management, quality, whatever it is. The implication isn't that they're useless for practical skills,
Right.
but that they fall short if we think they could just magically give us the more substantial stuff. That deeper understanding, that way of being that May or Dostoevsky were writing about. Gerber's pretty clear you can't get that just from external training.
Okay, so if we're sort of disconnected from this deeper caring and the surface level stuff isn't the answer, how do we get to that substantial stuff? How do we bridge that gap?
Well, this leads him to the idea that we need a shock, a really profound disruption.
Doc, that sounds, intense.
It is. He calls it a self-administered shock. So it's not something that just happens to you. It's something you deliberately do to disrupt your own status quo.
Okay.
And he doesn't pull any punches describing it. It has to be so jolting, so outrageous, so unsympathetic to our little wants.
Unsympathetic to our little wants. Wow. That connects right back to those insignificant things we tend to care about.
Exactly. This shock is meant to force fundamental change. It's got to be powerful enough to, blow us off the planet we've shaped for ourselves or make us burn to a crisp. It's presented as this, brutal but necessary jolt to break free.
It sounds terrifying, honestly, like a real leap into the dark. And he acknowledges that fear, right? He talks about the problem and the opportunity.
Yeah, the problem is the fear, the massive uncertainty. The opportunity is the chance for that profound change.
But how do you get ready for that? How do you become willing, really willing deep down to take such a scary leap of faith?
Yes.
Especially when there are no guarantees.
That's the crux of it, isn't it? It means overcoming that really basic human need for comfort, for certainty. And this is where he circles back so powerfully to Sarah's journey.
Right. He was watching her step onto her new path.
Uh-huh. And realizing he didn't really understand it, but he could sense how significant it was. He saw it reach forward into her future, but also backward, connecting to her spirit from childhood.
That connection to the spirit, that seems really key here.
It is. And Gerber shares this deep belief, something he says comes from his own life, that your spirit isn't something you find by, digging around in the past. It's not static.
Oh.
Instead, he says, your spirit isn't behind you. It is way ahead of you. It's waiting for you in the future, specifically on the path you choose.
That feels counterintuitive. Usually we think about finding our true self as, uncovering something buried, right? He's saying it's something you actively move towards. Exactly. It's dynamic. It's future-focused. He even calls it a bit metaphysical, especially coming from him, this, hard-headed guy obsessed with business systems.
Yeah, I could see that.
But he says with total certainty, he knows it's true from his own life. His spirit was waiting on a path he had to choose, and he had to step out, brightly, authentically, to chase after what he calls the I, the greatest, fullest version of himself.
And chasing that I, stepping onto that path towards your future spirit. What does he call that?
He calls it being spirit whole. That's his term of being spiritual, truly in touch with your soul. It's not about religion or dogma. It's about actively pursuing your highest potential on your chosen path.
Okay, so meaning isn't just out there waiting to be found. It's within your spirit, waiting ahead of you, and you access it by choosing and walking your path. And this ties back to Sarah's aunt and caring. Yes, exactly. He says meaning lies in our spirit and what her aunt called caring. It was Sarah's spirit that truly cared about the things she loved, the things she did with her aunt. Maybe her parents or teachers saw that passion as, disruptive.
Yeah.
But it was her authentic spirit expressing itself. And the path she's choosing now, this entrepreneurial path, it's actually the same path she was already on instinctively in those childhood memories.
Mm-hmm.
The kitchen, the summer air, the four oaks, the black horse.
So it was always her path, but she got lost somehow. Why did she get lost?
By not trusting it. By losing connection with that inner knowing, with her spirit, because she was chasing external approval, needing validation from parents, teachers. She basically stepped off her own path to fit in somewhere else, sacrificing her truth for safety.
And this entrepreneurial path she's back on now, how does he describe it?
Oh, as winding, unpredictable, full of surprises, those necessary shocks we talked about. Definitely not certain.
Sounds exciting, but also maybe a bit scary.
Right. But that very uncertainty, that lack of a clear map, is what makes it exciting. It's the path of constant engagement.
Engagement with the business, with yourself.
With both, really. He calls it the path of life. And echoing Rolome again, he calls it the path of freedom. But not just freedom to choose, but the power to actually mold and create ourselves.
Ah, connecting right back to that May quote from the beginning.
Exactly. And he pulls in Nietzsche here, too. Freedom is the capacity to become what we truly are. He's basically saying the entrepreneurial journey, when you get down to its core, is this profound path of self-creation. Achieving real freedom by aligning what you do externally with your spirit internally.
That just completely reframes what starting a business is about. It's not just creating a thing, a service. It's about creating yourself.
It positions the whole journey as inherently spiritual, focused on self-realization, living with integrity, living with purpose.
Okay, but there's always a but, isn't there? Standing in the way of this path, this freedom, this spirit is the comfort zone.
Ah, yes, the great barrier. He introduces the comfort zone as the curtain, or the false mask Sarah put on as a kid when her spirit didn't feel safe. It's that protective layer she built, the persona she used to navigate a world that maybe didn't fully get her true self.
And it becomes the lens she sees everything through.
Exactly. It's her tight little cozy planet, he calls it. With all the familiar routines, the predictable results, the little hiding places where her spirit can duck for cover to avoid discomfort or judgment, it feels safe because it's known, it's controlled.
But it's a false kind of safety.
Totally false. And he gives this really stern warning. The comfort zone is insidious. It can grab you any time, especially when you least expect it, because it knows how much you crave comfort, how much you want control, how much you flinch from the uncertainty of the true path. It plays on that desire for ease.
And the cost of staying in that zone, prioritizing comfort and control over everything else.
It's the ultimate price. Gerber puts it chillingly, your life. By staying small, safe, hidden in that comfort zone, you give up the chance to step onto the path of freedom, to pursue your spirit, to become who you truly are. You sacrifice authentic living.
That is a high price indeed.
It is. And he really hammers this home for Sarah. If living with her spirit on this new path means anything, she has to guard it fiercely with her life. Because comfort overtakes us all when we're least prepared for it. Comfort makes cowards of us all. It's the #1 internal enemy on this path.
Wow. Okay, so the letter to Sarah ends on this incredibly intense, personal, high-stakes note. It really sets the stage, doesn't it, for the epilogue, which takes this personal journey and kind of zooms out to a universal call.
Yeah, the epilogue shifts gears. It moves from Sarah's specific story to a call to all of us. But framed, interestingly, not as a call to battle, but as a call to arms for
Learning.
learning what specifically? Learning how to feel, think, and act differently and more productively, more humanly. It's about learning a fundamentally new way of being in the world. And he kicks off this section with another really potent quote, this one from Carlos Castaneda.
What's the quote?
You should know now that a man of knowledge lives by acting, not by thinking about acting, not by thinking about what he will think when he has finished acting. A man of knowledge chooses a path with heart and follows it.
That immediately picks up that theme of action, of stepping onto the path that we just talked about with Sarah. It's like the direct opposite of being stuck thinking in the comfort zone.
Exactly. It's all about moving from that internal world, thoughts, fears, desire for comfort, into the external world of engaged action, taking the step.
He then goes on to paint this picture of the world out there, talking about the incredible speed of change, boundaries dissolving everywhere, geographic, political, social, emotional, rules changing constantly.
Yeah, new rules pop up, but they get swallowed by more change almost immediately. The result, he says, is this feeling of chaos, disorder, a world that feels troubled, confusing. And I think a lot of us can relate to that feeling of external chaos today.
Absolutely. It feels huge, overwhelming, like the problems are out there and they're just too big for us to fix.
And that is precisely where Gerber makes his most critical turn, his most important argument, I think. He argues that the trouble, the chaos, it didn't start out there.
Okay, why is that distinction so vital?
Because if the chaos really did start only out there, we'd be kind of screwed, wouldn't we? I mean, who among us can actually control or really impact those massive, complex global systems?
Right. No.
He puts it bluntly, almost brutally. We can't. It's that simple. Trying to fix the world from the outside, he sees that as just putting on Band-Aids, maybe changing temporary circumstances, but not touching the underlying chaos. We can't fix the world any more easily than most small business owners can fix their own chaotic businesses.
So if we can't start by fixing the world out there, where do we start?
We start in here. That's the core message of the epilogue. We don't have to change the external world first. The real leverage point is much closer. And if we really want success, if we want growth, if we want a better world, we must start in here.
He really emphasizes this point, doesn't he? Repeats it.
Oh, yeah, several times.
Yeah.
Drives it home. The chaos isn't out there in everyone else. The chaos is in here in you and me. He completely flips the script. The world's not the problem. You and I are. That chaos we see outside is just a reflection of our own internal turmoil, our lack of structure, our fears, our unresolved stuff, our inability to live from our spirit consistently.
So if we see senselessness, violence, greed, stupidity out there, it's because those things are also inside us.
That's his really challenging point. The external is a mirror. So the way to change the world, to bring order and meaning, it's not by fighting the symptoms outside, it's by addressing the source inside. If the world is going to be changed, we must first change our lives.
That is such a radical shift in perspective. And honestly, it feels like it goes against our natural tendency, doesn't it? We are such an out-there society, always trying to fix the external, fix circumstances, fix other people specifically so we don't have to change.
Exactly.
Coming inside, facing our own stuff, that's hard. It requires, like, vulnerability, accountability.
It really does.
Yeah.
But Gerber's argument is that the time for avoiding that internal work is over. Like now, more than ever, we need to learn how to change in here because the external chaos is just too much. We can't afford to keep operating from our own internal disorder. The stakes are just too high.
Okay, so we recognize the chaos is internal. We need to change in here. How do we connect that internal work back to the external world, back to the business? How do we bridge that gap?
And this is where the small business comes back into the picture. But now with this completely new layer of purpose, Gerber presents the small business not just as, a way to make money, but as the potential bridge.
The bridge between you and the world.
Exactly. It becomes this tangible thing, this structure that can pull your inner world and the external world together. And the goal is to make both of them more human, more productive, to make both work. The business becomes the place where you do the work of integrating your inner self with the external reality.
And this leads into what, for me, is maybe one of the most powerful metaphors in the whole book.
The business is a dojo,
Yeah.
right? Your small business, he says, can become your dojo, your practice hall for life.
And he uses that quote from Joe Hyam's Zen in the Martial Arts to really explain what a dojo means here.
Yeah, it's a beautiful description from Hyams. A dojo is a miniature cosmos where we make contact with ourselves, our fears, anxieties, reactions, and habits.
A miniature cosmos, I like that.
It is an arena of confined conflict where we confront an opponent who is not an opponent, but rather a partner engaged in helping us understand ourselves more fully. A place where we can learn a great deal in a short time about who we are and how we react in the world.
And the key part, right? The conflicts inside the dojo help you handle conflicts outside. The focus, the discipline you practice there carries over into everyday life. It becomes a source of learning, of self-enlightenment.
And Gerber just jumps right in, and that is exactly what a small business is. He sees a perfect parallel. And if you think about it, it makes sense. In your business, you're constantly facing challenges, right? Setbacks, difficult customers, cash flow problems, messy processes.
Those are the confined conflicts.
Exactly. And the opponent, maybe it's that demanding customer or that inefficient process isn't really the opponent.
They're a partner, helping you see yourself.
Right. Maybe an unwilling partner, but still. When something challenging happens in your business, how do you react? Do you get frustrated? Blame someone. Avoid it. Those reactions show you your stuff, your fears, anxieties, reactions, habits, your internal chaos.
The business basically forces you to look in the mirror, to see your own patterns.
Precisely. And it's a place to practice new ways of being, new ways of responding. It gives you immediate feedback, doesn't it? If you don't implement that system, chaos erupts. If you handle a customer poorly, you lose the sale. It's instant consequences. It's where you test your assumptions about yourself, about the world.
It demands questions, specifics, attention to detail, rules, order.
Yeah, it's super practical. But, like we just discussed, the path also needs idealism, that connection to spirit. And the business is the ideal place because it's a world brought down to a manageable size. Small enough to respond to you, but big and complex enough to test everything about you. Your discipline, patience, clarity, willingness to face difficulty. It really is a world of our own.
And that phrase, a world of our own, connects right back to the original dream, doesn't it? The dream of American small business.
Yes. That initial spark, the thing that gets so many people started, is fundamentally this desire to create a world of our own. Gerber suggests the whole entrepreneurial revolution might be partly this collective flight away from the chaos out there.
Into a world you can control, shape, make sense of.
Right. A yearning for structure, form, control, but also something more personal, a deeper connection with yourself and the world that maybe feels impossible in a regular job.
People are looking for that order, that personal connection they feel is missing out there.
But, and here's the catch again, As the book explains, and as we see everywhere, that dream usually doesn't pan out. Most small businesses fail, or the owner ends up trapped, working harder than ever.
And his reason why the dream fails is so simple, and it connects right back to that in-here chaos.
Exactly. We bring our chaos with us. We don't change. We desperately try to fix the business, the out there part, tinkering with external things, but we don't do the necessary work in here.
So the business they started hoping it would be this better world.
Ends up becoming the worst job in the world because it just mirrors and amplifies the owner's own internal chaos instead of being an escape from it.
So the lesson, again, is you can't really change your life
Yeah.
or create that world of your own just by starting with the external stuff. That usually just creates more chaos.
Right. The only way that seems sustainable, the only way to really build your own world, is by first understanding how that world is built, how it works, what its rules are. And that means studying the world, sure, but more importantly, studying how we are in it.
Studying ourselves, our own internal reactions, patterns, chaos, using the business as the lens.
Precisely. And the small business, because it's small enough to study and responsive enough to give feedback, is the perfect lab for this. So the business development program, that methodical approach from the book, becomes the way to study effectively. And the discipline needed for the franchise prototype gives you the structure for this kind of rigorous self-look and practice.
So all those technical business things, business development, the franchise prototype, they aren't just about building a predictable business machine. They're actually tools for self-discovery, for internal change.
That's exactly the argument. They provide the framework for the practice inside your business dojo. And the core practice, the actual stuff you do in this dojo, is innovation, quantification, and orchestration IQO.
Okay, IQO as practice. Let's unpack that a bit more in this dojo context. We know IQO is about creating systems, processes. How is that a practice like in martial arts?
Okay, think about it. Innovation is the creative spark, seeing a better way. Quantification is the discipline to measure it, to see if it really works, facing the hard numbers. Orchestration is the commitment to making it repeatable, documenting it, making sure anyone can do it consistently.
Right. And how does doing that reveal something about me, the owner?
Well, this whole practice of IQO forces you into contact with your opponent, which might be reality or a tough task, or just your own resistance. It forces you to see your limits. Can I actually innovate here? Your weaknesses. Ugh, I hate tracking numbers. I always avoid quantification. Your strengths. I'm good at figuring out processes, but terrible at writing them down for others. My orchestration is weak.
It shows you what really works in the world based on actual results from IQO, rather than what our imaginations might wish would work.
Yes. The business dojo, unlike maybe your internal world of wishful thinking or excuses, has real stakes. As he puts it, kind of using that martial arts feel, in the business dojo, there's no room for pure imagination because you could get killed out there. Your business could fail, you could stay trapped. IQO is the discipline forcing you to ground everything in reality.
So IQO isn't just a business tool. It's like the belief system of the business, but also the philosophical bedrock for how you interact with the world through the business. It's how you learn, create, and push past your own self-imposed limits that often come from that internal chaos, that comfort zone.
It's the active discipline that transforms the business. It stops being just a place to make money. Through rigorously practicing IQO and business development, the business becomes something more than merely a place to go to work. It's no longer just the technician's burden drowning in tasks. It becomes a place that can actually satisfy the whole person. There's space for the entrepreneur's vision, the manager's need for order, and the technician's craft, all working together.
Which leads to that really powerful closing thought for the section. Your small business and mine can give us more life. That's such a shift, isn't it? From seeing the business as just income or even freedom from work to seeing it as a source of more life.
It totally reframes the whole point of entrepreneurship. It becomes a path to personal vitality, fulfillment, achieved through discipline, self-confrontation, and creation right there in the business.
Okay, so after taking all that in the philosophy, the inner work connected to outer results, the business as a dojo, the really practical question comes up, doesn't it? For anyone listening, it's got to be, okay, great, but does it actually work? Does building a business this way, with the franchise prototype model, actually lead to that more life, that freedom?
Yeah, and Gerber tackles that head on. He uses that old Chinese proverb to set up his answer.
Which one is that?
When you hear something, you will forget it. When you see something, you will remember it. But not until you do something will you understand it.
Oh, that's perfect. It captures that move from just hearing or seeing to doing and truly understanding.
Exactly. And his answer to does it work is just completely clear. Yes, it does work every time it's applied, and it will work for you.
So he's not hedging. He's saying it's not just theory, it's a proven outcome. But you said it's not magic? There's a reason it works. What's the key?
The core reason, he says, is that the process itself, building that systematized business, using business development, using the franchise prototype it, requires the full engagement of the people working it. It demands more than just like nodding along or putting in minimal effort.
Can't be done half-heartedly or, frantically just trying stuff.
No, it forces you to be present, intentional, disciplined. It can only be done intelligently, reasonably, intentionally, systematically, and compassionately. Those are the qualities the process itself demands. And by demanding them, it helps cultivate them in you as you do the work.
So the act of building the business the right way is also simultaneously an act of building those qualities in yourself. Like the process changes the person.
That's exactly it. And the real key, the engine driving the transformation, is this. The very process of business development creates instantaneous change in the people who engage in it. It's not like you build the systems and then maybe you change later. The change starts happening the moment you start doing the work of systemizing, of building that prototype.
Instantaneous change.
Yeah.
How does that actually happen?
Well, when you're engaged in that process, you constantly have to remember your aim, right? Your vision, your dream, for the business, yes, but also for your life. And because you're always holding that aim while working on the nuts and bolts of the business, your aim gets tethered to something real in the world, their business.
Okay, so the abstract dream isn't just floating around anymore. It gets anchored in reality.
Exactly. The business becomes the actual, tangible place where your aims, your values, your hopes get tested and made real in a concrete, practical way. It stops being just a nice idea in your head. It becomes a symbol for the life they wish to live.
A living symbol.
Yeah, a visible manifestation of who they are and what they believe. A living, active, evolving testament to the will of man. The business, when it's built intentionally with systems, becomes this direct physical reflection of the disciplined, purposeful person who built it. The external world finally mirrors the internal change.
That's a really powerful connection. The business isn't just proof of good strategy, it's proof of the owner's personal growth.
It shifts from being maybe a source of chaos, reflecting the owner's internal state, to being a source of order in life, reflecting a whole different way of being.
And building on that Chinese proverb understanding comes from doing it. Gerber makes a really direct call to action here, doesn't he? No more messing around.
Oh yeah, he echoes Castaneda, echoes the proverb one last time. But I ask you not to think about it anymore. It's time to act.
Because all the thinking, dreaming, analyzing, it only gets you so far.
Right. Because until you do, you won't understand it. That deep embodied understanding, the real wisdom, it only comes through the work itself, through the practice in the business dojo. And the promise is pretty compelling. And when you do, there will be nothing left to think about. You'll be well on your way. That internal chatter, the doubt, it quiets down when you're actually doing it.
Until you act, it's just another good idea, just another creative thought. It doesn't have substance yet.
It needs to be turned into an innovation, something real, tangible through action.
Yeah.
And this whole section climaxes with that really stirring call. It's time to bring the dream back to American small business. It's been gone far too long.
Wow. So he's reconnecting the practical work of building the business right back to that original, often lost dream of creating something meaningful, something personal. But now with the understanding that the meaning comes from inside and it's forged through the discipline of working on the business and yourself.
Yeah, it's a call to reclaim that idealism at the heart of entrepreneurship, but with the mature understanding that it takes real personal transformation to make it stick.
Okay, so you've heard all this. Maybe you're feeling inspired, maybe even feeling that shock he talked about. You're ready to act. You want to turn your business into that money machine, that turnkey operation. The afterword then asks the obvious question, so now what do you do?
And the first step, it's the same one he gave Sarah. The same one apparently thousands of others have taken. You must take the first step.
Okay, what is that crucial first step? What does it look like in practice?
You must step back from your business and look at it through your new E-Myth eyes. It's not just glancing at it, it's looking differently, with this specific perspective, informed by everything we've just been talking about.
Right, getting that distance, moving from being buried in the business to working on it. But now with this added layer of seeing it as like a reflection of your internal state.
Exactly. And the process has three parts. First, analyze your business as it is today. Like brutally honest assessment. Where's the chaos? What's broken? Second, decide what it must look like when it's finally the way you want it. That's the vision, the future state, predictable, profitable, reflecting your aims.
Okay, analyze today, define the future. And third,
Determine the gap, the space between where you are now and where you need to be to make that dream real. Quantify it. What's missing? What has to change?
and when you do that analysis using those E-myth eyes, looking specifically for the cause of that gap, what's the fundamental discovery?
Gerber is totally clear on this.
Yeah.
He says the key discovery every time is that the gap is always created by the absence of systems. It's the lack of those documented, repeatable ways of doing things, the lack of a proprietary way of doing business that makes you different because you're consistent.
Okay. So the external chaos, the gap between now and the dream, it's the direct result of missing internal structure, the systems. And like we talked about, that lack of external structure often mirrors the owner's internal chaos.
Precisely. The missing systems out there in the business, they're often a direct sign of the untrained technician or the undisciplined manager in here, maybe driven by fears or habits from the comfort zone. The gap isn't random. It's rooted internally. The source material even mentions it. Since '86, E-Myth Worldwide, his company, has helped tons of owners take this first step and see that systems gap.
And the way they talk about helping people, it ties back to that bridge idea we discussed earlier, right?
Yeah, it talks about learning how to cross the bridge from where you are to where you want to be in your business, your life, and your future. It reinforces that the business isn't separate from your life or future. It is the bridge, but only if you build it right with systems and cross it by changing yourself.
And just to bring it all home, the afterword in this whole phase of the journey ends by hammering that core principle of action one more time.
The Chinese proverb, right? One last time for emphasis. When you hear something, you forget it. When you see something, you remember it. But not until you do something will you understand it.
The focus isn't on endless learning or planning. It's on the transformation that happens when you actually do the work of building the business correctly.
Yeah, the understanding, the mastery, achieving the dream, finding that freedom, that spiritful life, it all comes through the engagement, through the practice, right there in the dojo of your business.
So just to quickly wrap our heads around this profound journey Gerber takes us on in these final parts. We started with this idea that building a business is deeply tied to building a life.
And he grounds that in the human search for meaning, connecting it to big thinkers, philosophers.
Right. And then his challenge, that maybe we lack the seriousness, the caring to find real meaning today. We settle for surface stuff, thinking training can substitute for inner work.
And that lack of depth, that internal chaos inside us gets reflected out there in the world and definitely in the disorder of our businesses. So the fix isn't trying to change the outside first.
It's confronting and changing ourselves in here.
Exactly. And the small business becomes the perfect place for that. The dojo, the practice hall where we face our stuff and where the discipline of IQO innovation, quantification, orchestration becomes the practice that builds both the business structure and our internal strength.
We learned that this process works because it demands full engagement, and that engagement creates change in us as we do it. It anchors our abstract dreams in the real world of the business.
Turning the business into a living symbol of the life we're building and the person we're becoming.
And the practical starting point. Step back with those E-myth eyes, analyze the gap between today and the dream, and realize that gap is almost always about missing systems.
Systems which often reflect something missing or blocked internally in the owner.
And this isn't just theory, right? This applies directly to you, the listener, right now. Wherever you are with your business dreaming, stuck, growing, the work in here, facing your chaos, stepping out of comfort, committing to the discipline of systems that directly shapes the world you create out there in your business and in your life.
It really elevates entrepreneurship, doesn't it? From just making money to being this profound path of self-creation, chasing a truly meaningful, spiritful life.
So as you think about all this, here's a final thought to chew on. If your business really is a dojo where you confront yourself, and the first step is seeing the missing systems that create the gap, what's the specific internal conflict, the fear, the habit, the resistance inside you right now that's stopping you from putting that particular missing system in place? How might tackling that internal block be the real first step to crossing the bridge from your business today to the life you truly want?